there's a $68 trillion of infrastructure investment around the world. This enormous amount cannot be fully funded via traditional means. A lot of governments are now pretty cash-strapped. That's why we need a new source of funding. We fractionalize it in the form of tokenized funds and tokenized RWAs. This is essentially the enormous multi-trillion-dollar of opportunity the Hong Kong government has looked at. There's so much wealth from private investors. They gravitate towards Hong Kong to set up their presence. For fintechs that are serving B2B, it's a no-brainer to choose Hong Kong. In the past, it's mostly West into Hong Kong as a base to go to Asia. But now it's the Chinese firms in Hong Kong to go to the world.
There's always a bit of competition between China and US, but there's also collaboration. How do you see Hong Kong in this cross-border collaboration?
Hong Kong really has the first taste of how all these great AI capabilities can really do. From the provider's perspective, it can be quite competitive. For the users, it's great. You get good value for money because of the competition.
Welcome to the InvestHK podcast. King Leung, great to have you, the Global Head of Financial Services, Fintech and Sustainability. It's an honor to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to catch up again.
Yeah, exactly. We met quite a while ago, last time in our office, and you were interviewing me, and now it's the other way around. So thank you really for making it to the podcast studio. There's so much I can learn from you, and looking forward to have this conversation. But before we go into Invest Hong Kong, where you play, of course, your main role, maybe tell me something about yourself, something unique that tells us a story.
Well, to start with, it would be good to describe myself as a intellectually curious person that like to get into different topics that interest me. So this has always been my passion. So now that looking back, I look at my career where I was in mechanical engineering, I was in supply chain management, I was in consulting, I was in VC, I was a serial entrepreneur, I did some teaching. So all these experiences have been super helpful to serving the clients that we are now serving at Invest Hong Kong. Now, the reason is very simple, because for a lot of firms, where they are financial services firms, they are fintech firms, sustainability firms, that oftentimes they would run into challenges such as finding clients, finding funding, and how should they position themselves, the packaging of the brand, and so on. So all these things, I would say that for the past 20 plus years of experience, I could relate to those past experiences, particularly during the times when I was an entrepreneur, running fintechs, serving large financial services companies. So as a result, when I talk to the founders, oftentimes I can connect quite well. At the same time, I can also understand the pain points quite well. And as a result, for the 6 years I spent at Invest Hong Kong so far, I've been building up different capabilities at Invest Hong Kong so that we are able to serve these clients like yourself, how we can be of help to you, getting clients, getting funding, and so on. So I think all things basically come together.
Yeah, and to add, I think what I really admire is how you bring the different cultural backgrounds together. We will come back to Invest Hong Kong and of course also the role of Hong Kong to play shortly. But you just mentioned you were in Lausanne in Switzerland, so you really bring both the West, the East, the different countries and personalities together, and that's great, and has also been a great experience for us at Simpas. So thank you once more to join us here at the InvestHK podcast, and maybe let's dive into also what Invest Hong Kong does. It's really a pioneer also in helping younger startups, companies to set up here. Again, as I said, Simpas has profited from it. You helped us, and that's also where I was happy to help promote with the video series last year. So maybe in a summary, what does Invest Hong Kong stand for? What's your role, and also what's maybe coming up?
Well, this is a great question and great timing, because this year is the 25th anniversary of Invest Hong Kong. Oh, wow. So time flies. Actually, there have been different generations of colleagues In fact, some of them have worked in West Hong Kong for the full 24, 25 years. We still have some of those, I would say, the pioneers who have been helping us to build the foundation. Now, but definitely over the few generations of leadership at West Hong Kong, we've been growing our footprints. So now covering the 35 cities around the world, including Hong Kong as the headquarters. Now, at the end of the day, like myself, I have a global role. So I have to literally just travel around the world to try to promote Hong Kong. So practically there are three things, in fact, like four things that the Invest Hong Kong, and particularly the teams that I'm responsible for, that we focus quite a lot of energy in. Now, first and foremost, we are at least starting from the origin of being an inbound investment promotion agency. So that's why we've been going around the world to look for companies that can fill a gap in the market. So therefore, there could be opportunities for those firms because it's a white space. Now, so besides the inbound, over time, we recognize that there's what we call the aftercare needs. Because when firms have set up in Hong Kong, initially they might have certain needs, but over time, as they evolve the business, they may have needs to expand regionally or globally using Hong Kong as a springboard. So that's why Invest Hong Kong has also been helping different firms in this regard. And particularly the scope of this sort of outbound role has basically expanded in recent years, which I can get into a bit more detail later on. Now, the third thing that we do is that we run several flagship events. Now, we don't run a lot of events, but we do run several major ones. So such as the Hong Kong Fintech Week, which is the premier events for Fintech, the largest of such nature in Hong Kong and the region. And then we also have the Samyak Festival, Wealth for Good, which is predominantly focusing on the family offices space. So these are the flagship events run by Invest Hong Kong. Of course, we also sponsor events. We also co-organize events with some other partners. So in a way, we also serve the role as like a marketing platform now on behalf of the Hong Kong government. Now, the fourth thing, which a lot of folks may not be as aware of the role that we play, is that, for instance, my team in financial services and fintech, we often work very closely with the policymakers in Hong Kong. This is called FSTB, which stands for Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau. So they are the policymakers. And then we also work very closely with the regulators, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, HMA, the SFC, the Securities and Futures Commission, the Insurance Authority, the Customs Excise Department, and so on. Now, so these are the regulators and the policymakers that work very closely, particularly when the government decides to launch some new policy and the subsequent regulations. So in recent years, which has been like all over the news, not just Hong Kong, but globally, is the embracing of digital assets by the Hong Kong government. So that will include, crypto, the tokenization, the blockchain, now stable coins, which is like a hot topic in recent months. So these are the things that when the policymakers and the regulators formulate their plans. Now, of course, they have their own thinking, but at the same time, we need to have a bridge with the private sector to make sure that the policies and the regulations are something that are conducive to doing business. Because after all, we're not doing this in a vacuum. It has to serve a purpose where the business sector can really thrive. So that's why the Invest Hong Kong, arguably, the whole Hong Kong government, we are the one department that's the closest, if not the closest, is one of the closest to the private sector. So that's why we oftentimes would be able to collect some really valuable market inputs. And then we're able to sort of aggregate those inputs and then play back to our policymaker and regulator colleagues. So this is a way for us to be able to maintain the balance between the financial innovation, at the same time to have some kind of safeguards, to the investors and investor protection and so forth. So these are the four roles the Invest Hong Kong play.
Thank you so much for summarizing. And you already alluded a bit to what would be my next question. Of course, Hong Kong as a city, as a very vibrant city. I live here now also since 10 years, permanent resident, and I love the vibe. It's always been a bit the gateway between the West and the East, as I said earlier, with, of course, Greater China. And there's a lot of innovation across the board, and there's innovation from the West coming. And the fintech week you alluded to was, of course, always great to see that there's really companies from around the world. So in terms of the city itself, how do you see it evolving, and also in its role as a global financial services hub?
Well, definitely, this is a good point. It has been evolving, particularly in the past few years, quite a lot. Now, the one thing that's been quite consistent is that Hong Kong now is still number 3 in the world in terms of the international financial center status, of course, after New York and London. Mm-hmm. Now, and of course, when we look at the target audience, if the companies are in finance, let's say in asset management or in fintech, so naturally these firms, when they decide to expand, let's say from Europe to Asia, then naturally you want to establish at a place where there's enough liquidity, ideally the biggest liquidity in the region. So this is one of the reasons why the Hong Kong, the equity market, for instance, now this year, up to this point in mid-July, we are already back to the number 1 spot where it comes to IPOs. I mean, the capital raised via IPO, Hong Kong is now back to number 1 spot in the world. Now, at the same time, we look at the asset management, and then people would often also equate to the wealth management market. So Hong Kong, again, is now, in fact, has been for a few years, according to the study from BCG, the Boston Consulting Group. Now we are sitting at number 2, largest cross-border wealth management center in the world, behind Switzerland. And of course, I think according to the same study, BCG is also projecting Hong Kong to surpass Switzerland in another 2 years' time. So that's why for a lot of asset managers, since there's so much wealth from the private investors, this is also another reason why they gravitate towards Hong Kong to set up their presence. Now, but at the same time, the fintechs, why are they also choosing Hong Kong as the entry point in Asia? Also for good reasons, because of the large number of financial institutions, right? The 160 plus banks, 160 plus insurance companies, like thousands of asset managers, wealth managers. You have the insurance brokers. If you add up all these, I would say B2B financial institutions, there are like thousands of them in a single city. So that's why, from a BD standpoint, business development is very efficient to try to BD in a market like this, which is so condensed with FIs. So again, for fintechs that are serving B2B, is a no-brainer to choose Hong Kong as a base. Now, I think the third thing that's oftentimes would be a good thing to remind ourselves is that when the, I would say, international firms, traditionally from the more mature Western markets, right, the US, the UK, right, the Switzerland, right, I mean, even the Singapore, Australia. So when firms from these markets expand to Asia, they often would choose Hong Kong. But in recent years, we are seeing some interesting change in terms of the trade flows, if you will, or the money flow. And that is this massive number of mainland capital. I'm referring to the mainland Chinese capital, and also the mainland Chinese financial services firms and the fintech firms and the tech firms, in fact, across all sectors almost, they're now choosing Hong Kong as their international headquarters, in which they would like to use Hong Kong as a springboard to expand internationally. So that also brings along enormous of capital and opportunities, because as these Chinese firms set in Hong Kong, now many of them may not have a good idea about how to enter the European market or the Middle East market in GCC or the Southeast Asian market. So then they are looking for partners in Hong Kong. They might have already got a presence here with origin, let's say from Switzerland, right, or other parts of Europe, so that they're able to leverage that connection and expertise to help these Chinese firms to expand to Europe. And this also applies to other regions that I just mentioned. So these are really the dynamics that in the past is mostly West into Hong Kong as a base to go to Asia. But now it's the Chinese firms in Hong Kong as a base to go to the world. And for firms that are serving both sides of firms, there's just a lot of opportunities here.
Yeah, and you alluded to two topics that I'm also quite interested in. I'm sure our audience is. One was crypto digital assets. and the other one being family offices business. Maybe to those two specifically, can you quickly elaborate what Hong Kong is doing and what is also coming in the coming years?
Of course, I think let's talk about crypto, because crypto is always that sort of like a sexy kid in the crowd. Now, so by now it has grown up, right? So now probably sitting at 3-4 trillion of market cap for all crypto combined. So it's no longer just a hobby. So now it's going mainstream, particularly since last year when the US approved, I think 11 ETFs, or Bitcoin ETFs. So that has really gone mainstream. Now, but the thing is that when Hong Kong look at this, like years ago, we don't look at this as just a crypto play. We look at this as a play where a lot of financial transactions are moving not online, but on chain. So that's why we've been looking at the possibilities, opportunities on not just crypto, but also digital assets at large. And by that, I'm referring to what people normally refer to as a real world assets tokenization, where the funds, the bonds, even gold or intellectual property, income streams from EV charging stations, you name it, right? Carbon credits. So there's just a lot of innovation going on where different assets are being tokenized. Now, and sometimes when people talk about it, they're like, "Well, how big can that be?" Well, interestingly, there was this article by Mr. Larry Fink of BlackRock early part this year, in which this is, I think, under the headline of the chairman's letter. Now, so what BlackRock has been looking at this space is that we see this opportunity where there's a $68 trillion of infrastructure investment needs around the world. And by that, it can be the traditional infrastructure, such as the ports, right? But also the new generation of infrastructure, such as the AI data centers or also sustainable development. It could be, the hydrogen power plants using the green energy to make it like green hydrogen production. So there's all kinds of infrastructure investments that amounts to around $68 trillion US. Now, according to the thesis from BlackRock in that article, again, this enormous amount cannot be fully funded via the traditional means, such as the banks, be it the balance sheet of governments, because again, a lot of governments are now pretty cash strapped. So that's why, and the banks are a little bit stressed as well. So that's why we need like a new source of funding. Now, interestingly, someone has done the math in which the amount of public capital and the amount of private capital are about the same globally. So that means if somehow we are able to tap into the private capital to help fund this kind of infrastructure projects, then we have this new stream of capital to fund these amazing, long tail income stream kind of assets. Now, and of course, another question that oftentimes people ask is, so why would the private investors, such as the family offices, the high net worths, be even interested about infrastructure projects? This sounds like something that the large funds, institutional players are doing. Well, in a way, it's true. However, after 2022, things change. Because I think if we recall just a few years back, in that year, 2022, there was a time that both the equity markets and the debt market, fixed income market, both literally collapsed in prices. So for a lot of the traditional portfolio of 60-40, they're really hurting. So that's why since then, we've been observing quite a lot of interest of the private investors to diversify their portfolio into, broadly speaking, the alternative assets. And by that, if this is something that is lowly correlated with equities and bonds, that's even better. So that's why we look at infrastructure. Typically, it's a very steady kind of income. It's stretched out for a long time, very steady in the long run. So from a correlation standpoint, it's relatively much lower compared to equities and fixed income. So that's why this is becoming very attractive. Plus, with the very steady return, the high net worth people, they just love it. As a result, so how do you provide access to this like hundreds of billions of dollars of investments? Well, you fractionalize it. Yeah. You fractionalize it in the form of tokenized funds and tokenized RWAs. So again, I can go on and on. But this is essentially the enormous, like multi-trillion-dollar of opportunity the Hong Kong government has looked at. We thought this is what we belong. This is where we belong as an IFC. So that's why if you look around the world, Hong Kong definitely is one of the tier one markets in the world that's leading in the developments of the whole tokenization evolution.
Yeah, thank you also for bringing more light into what actually digital asset means. It's much more than crypto, and everyone knows Bitcoin, of course, but yes, tokenization of even real assets infrastructure. So great to hear. On the second topic, family offices, I know the Hong Kong is doing a lot and Invest Hong Kong is involved. What do you see in terms of trends and maybe also a bit of numbers, how it has been growing the recent years?
Well, first of all, as a baseline, Invest Hong Kong, we have commissioned a study and we got some professional help from Deloitte. It was, I think, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, around that time, in which the results published pointed to the sizing of over 2,700 single family offices in Hong Kong. So this is actually a pretty large number, largest in Asia, actually. Now, and as a result, that actually caught the attention of a lot of people, including the large families, not just from mainland China. Of course, this is a major source of FOs to Hong Kong, but also in the Southeast Asia, and also, believe it or not, also from Europe. Now, the one thing that is sometimes underappreciated in Hong Kong is the stability and consistency. So when we look at the Hong Kong, the tax code, right, in terms of the tax rates and a lot of policies, they're quite consistent. Yeah. In fact, they're very consistent, as opposed to it's just flip-flopping depending on the situation. We keep it very constant. As a result, when some other jurisdictions raise the tax, then sometimes I think the well-to-do folks will have some additional thoughts about pursuing other markets. And Hong Kong has been that almost like safe harbor that has these like very consistent and very favorable and friendly policies and tax code and also other specific, I would say complementary services, if you will, servicing the family offices. Now, and one thing I have to credit my colleague in running the family office team is that under the hard work of this team and also our policy maker, FSDB, and many other SFC, and many people in the ecosystem. So now, if you really ask around, the whole traction of family offices really accelerated in the past year plus 2 years. I mean, you can just feel it. Now everybody is very optimistic. And also because of that kind of optimism and also the inflows of the family offices, they also attracts even more the asset managers and wealth managers to Hong Kong to service different segments of our clients. As a result, just think about it. For the family offices, besides tax, actually that might not be the number one reason for them to choose a jurisdiction. Now, one of the reasons why they chose a place to set their family offices is the diversity and choice of investment opportunities. And in Hong Kong, we have loads of them. So that's why the diversity and the depth of financial products really make Hong Kong a very attractive place for the family offices to set up here. Of course, I think you have other, the tax concession, you have, the financial fee. We have tons of events connecting the family offices around each other so they can exchange notes, get to know each other, networking, and so on. So there's just a lot of things going on in the FO space. It's super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget, it's all pretty simple. That sounds now easy, but tax it's much more simple than in other jurisdictions. It's also the life here, as you said. I mean, it's very dense. You can come around here in a few kilometers. You see all the businesses. Plus, it's vibrant, and it's for me still a great place to live. And with all that, of course, government support, I think it's great for businesses. There's another topic besides those two that is, of course, in everyone's mouth at the moment: AI, Gen AI. Which is a hot topic around the globe. So I know, of course, also very important to Hong Kong businesses here and the government and Invest Hong Kong. One of the hot topics. So what is your view on it, Invest Hong Kong's view, and what is also are you doing to ensure AI adoption?
Well, let's also baseline where we are. In fact, it was just over a year ago. There was this study that we found from a firm called Finastra from the UK. And they've conducted a global survey across all the major international financial centers. Of course, the New York, the London, the Zurich, the Hong Kong, and so on. So as they surveyed all the major banks and some major FIs, they asked a question of, well, by the way, what level of adoption of AI have you done? So it's a very simple question. Now, and in the end, the result was very... it was a pleasant surprise for us, to be honest. Because when we saw the results, actually, among all the IFCs around the world, Hong Kong ranked number 1 in this study.
Wow.
Yeah. In terms of AI adoption. And the percentage, if I'm not mistaken, it was 38%. Now, versus the global average is 26%. Now, in our friendly neighbor in Singapore, again, to our surprise, it was only like 16 or 18%. So that's why the Hong Kong was like way up there. Of course, now things are accelerating as different, not just the banks, but also the insurance companies in Hong Kong are also adopting AI in some ways more quietly. But then in terms of just the scale and scope of AI adoption, it's just mind-boggling. So the one thing I just want to highlight is that naturally, because Hong Kong is a IFC, and then we want to make sure that our FIs remain competitive so that we can remain as a very competitive IFC in the region, serving the different companies and corporations and so on. So it's almost like by default, we have to embrace all this innovation as a starting point. Now, but more specifically, when you look at the roadmap laid out by FSDB, again, the Policy Bureau at the Fintech Week last year, they laid out the roadmap, again, the responsible AI and the different ways where there's different supports, including, for instance, at the Cyberport, which is a Hong Kong government-funded accelerator. They're now providing the essentially GPUs with subsidies, so that different firms, particularly as they are doing some R&D on their models, and that they're able to tap into the AI supercomputing power, the GPUs as support with some subsidy from government. And then you also have the universities such as HKUST, the Hong Kong U. These are the world-class education institutions doing all sorts of research in AI. Now, and as a result, you have this base of AI talents, both from academia, but also from the financial sector. In fact, as a matter of fact, we also spoke with some quant funds operating in Hong Kong. And again, they are putting some of their pretty capable, I would say, data scientists, AI engineers in Hong Kong to help with their like quant trading business. So that's why I think in Hong Kong, it's not just about the fact that it's using for some simple work, but also in terms of the mission critical work, different AIs have been adopted pretty broadly. Now, and one quick point I want to also highlight is that in the governments, in Invest Hong Kong as an example, we also feel that we shall also lead by example. Yeah. So that's why we have adopted a French AI technology. In fact, the firm is called Libertify, and it was the winner of the global fast track competition. They've been running for a number of years, and they won during the year of 2023. Now, so as they won the competition, we would like to also try to help them to build the international exposure and so on. Of course, I think we have to go through the proper quotation process, but then in the end, we decided to do some pilots with this firm. Now, essentially what this firm is doing is what they very intelligently brand, in which they are offering what they call the corporate storytelling using AI. I said, wow, this is very interesting. So how do you do that? Now, essentially, they're using AI, and then the way that they do it is like you ingest a piece of material. It can be as simple as the fact sheet of a fund, right? A fund offered by asset manager. And then the AI, we ingest the data, and then you can pick an avatar. It can be like yourself or Salomon or myself, where we are able to speak not just in English, but you can pick any language. So it can be in French, it can be in German, it can be in Spanish, Arabic, you name it. Now, so the reason why we decided to pilot, to test this out, is because of the actual need as well. Because at Invest Hong Kong, as I just mentioned, we do cover the world, and we have to talk to people from different markets, ideally in different languages. But since we are not as multilingual as we would hope for, so that's why having a tool like this, we're able to, in a way, share more information about Hong Kong in different languages in a more scalable way, as opposed to having to do like really heavy-duty production for every single language. You just ingest it in one language. You can just so-called translate it into different languages, and then off you go in a very short turnaround time. So as a result, it's something that we feel that this is very helpful to not just firms like ourselves, but also for other private sector firms in finance and also other sectors.
Yeah, it brings us back also to fintech. And I mean, one last comment on AI, there was, of course, also the DeepSeek moment that everyone goes back to, where, of course, it shows also a bit again the West and the Eastern development in AI. And of course, there's a lot going on in China itself with big firms. And actually, most patents in AI are coming from China. People underestimate how much research is going into. And brings me to the cross-border collaboration between Hong Kong and China, both for, of course, companies that come from the West and also do business here and want to also enter into the big Greater China market, but also the other direction, of course, Chinese companies that are going to the West. And of course, there's always a bit of competition between China and the US, but there's also a collaboration. And Elon Musk spent significant time, and also Jensen Huang spent significant time in mainland China themselves. So there's also, of course, collaboration. So how do you see Hong Kong in this cross-border collaboration, especially also in terms of fintech?
Well, first of all, we meaning the users are definitely benefiting. Now, the reason is very simple. Now, on the one hand, we also have some international players where they are deploying the AI solutions in Hong Kong. But at the same time, as I briefly mentioned just now, a lot of mainland firms are now going out, or what they call go global, or in Chinese, 出海. And they are using Hong Kong as a starting point for good reasons. Because oftentimes when you look at the AI application, you ask around almost any AI firm if they do B2B, and you ask them which sectors they want to go after first, they'll often tell you finance and life science. These are the two most common use cases in terms of the verticals. And Hong Kong BIFC is a no-brainer too for mainland firms to come to Hong Kong first. Now, as a result, you have this one city in Hong Kong where you have this, I would say, integration, or this mix of the cream of the crops from both the Western markets and from China. And of course, I think given the current international environment, these Chinese firms may not be going around to the whole world yet. So that's why the Hong Kong really has the first taste of how all these like great AI capabilities can really do. Now, and of course, I think if we just really think about it, as this happened, of course, I think from the provider's perspective, it can be quite competitive. Now, so really the good ones can thrive and maybe down the road survive. But the good news is that for the users, it's great. You get good value for money because of the competition. Somehow that drive down the price, and then in the end, I think the users will benefit. They will also allow them to innovate even faster. So that's why Hong Kong is going to be a massive AI sandbox going forward.
Thank you so much. We're almost on time again. Is there one thing we missed? Anything that you will see in the next 3 to 5 years happening here in Hong Kong, or where Invest Hong Kong is involved in any specific topic?
Well, there will be a lot more interesting experiences that we would like people working here to experience. Because I would like to also touch on the lifestyle aspect of living and working in Hong Kong. As you know well, as an avid runner, there's just beautiful trails and very challenging ones, right? I mean, thanks to you and your friends, the Four Trail, the movie, is now going global as well. So in fact, you mentioned that I traveled to Zurich and Lausanne. In fact, I spent the past almost month and a half in GCC. I was in Oman, I was in UAE, I was in Switzerland, France, UK, Beijing. So I've been traveling so much the past month and a half. Now, but almost every place I've been to, so besides business, I often like to talk about lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then we talk about the restaurants, right, the hiking, and people love it. In fact, they like that aspect of it even more than business side. Yeah. Right? Because in a way, I mean, we are human beings. We decide to choose one place to work. We like to enjoy it, working and living there. So I think the countryside is something that is highly underappreciated by most people. For those who have not traveled to Hong Kong much. So again, for those who are interested about the nature, you can surf like Four Trails on YouTube, and you can find that beautiful movie. Now, at the same time, in fact, I was just searching on Perplexity just recently about the number of Michelin star restaurants in Asia. And interestingly, I found that from Perplexity, Tokyo has the most number of Michelin star restaurants in Asia, but followed by Hong Kong. Yeah. So we have like the second most number of Michelin stars restaurant in Asia. So that's why, from a lifestyle standpoint, there's just so much to explore here. And plus, I think geographically, it's almost like the center of Asia. It's easy to travel around. So I would really encourage, I think, the audience of yours, for those who have not traveled to Hong Kong much lately, do come and see for yourself and experience the amazing mix of the work and the lifestyle aspects and what Hong Kong has to offer.
Absolutely. And thank you also for mentioning, of course, Four Trails. But the countryside here, it's just one reason why I also love the city. I mean, there's no other place in the world where you have the big high skyscrapers and 10 minutes besides those, there is trails. You can really be in the nature. There is in Sai Kung, where I live, of course, the UNESCO World Heritage of a beautiful country park. So you have that mix of city and nature. So that's really beautiful. Plus, when it comes to the film industry, which I also was not so familiar with, but Hong Kong has always been internationally the place from Asia in terms of film industry, promoting films and movies, and Four Trails, of course, being from the Lee brothers, produced here in Hong Kong, both good friends of mine. They push also really the spirit of Hong Kong, both in terms of the runners, but also the beautiful scenes in nature. So thank you for mentioning that. And also in terms of food, of course, it's beautiful here. You can eat in a Swiss restaurant, French restaurant, and of course also Chinese, Japanese restaurants here. You have it all. It's a great selection. So thank you so much for joining me. Of course, you find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, PastCheck Podcast. I'm sure we find you also mostly on LinkedIn or anywhere else. Yeah,
just easy to find me, King Leung, Leung. And I'm on LinkedIn, so ping me and I'm happy to connect.
Thank you so much, King Leung from Invest Hong Kong. Looking forward to then the next one.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.